But Mark, let's close out the podcast taking a look at another team making some free agency moves, and we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars giving, and correct me if I'm wrong, a max, pretty much the max deal that they could almost give to Nick Foles. I know it was the biggest contract that the Jaguars have ever given a quarterback, I believe, in their franchise's history. Nick Foles making a butt ton of money. I think it's like $88 million and like 50-some guaranteed over 4 years. It is exactly that. I want to ask you this, just plain and simple. With 4 years to Nick Foles, $88 million, 50 guaranteed, how will the Nick Foles era play out for the Jaguars?
I honestly have no clue.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, this is such a mystery. The guy is 30 years old. He signed until he's 34. In this case, he got 4 years. He's a guy who shined in Philadelphia. Went to Jeff Fisher's Rams, which, to be fair, that is a place where anyone would have gone to fail.
It's where quarterbacks go to die.
And then he nearly... I think he was at the Chiefs for a little bit. He was nearly out of the NFL. He was ready to accept that it was over.
Like he was going to go and bag
he's
groceries.
Like, you know what? I am as good as Peyton Manning, some would say. But I'm all right.
Some would say
being
better
done.
than Peyton Manning.
No, as good. They've got the same record.
Okay.
As good for their, throwing touchdowns in one game. Anyways, and now he's back to Philadelphia, Super Bowl MVP, finally going over to Jacksonville. So, signs would say, if you want to look at history, that he can only really succeed in Philadelphia and he's bound to fail. Now, that's taking it a little far, but I just don't know. It's a question mark. I need to see him outside of a very friendly quarterback system because this Jacksonville offense is not going to be, it's not as bad as Jeff Fisher, but it's not going to be as friendly as either one of these Philadelphia offenses that he was a part of. So there's some question mark there. There is question mark to it of if it's going to work and how it's going to work out. They desperately need to get him some wide receivers, and they probably need to get him some support on the line as well. Defense is fine. You don't need to touch the defense. That's great. But get him some support because they've got a running back who, really was not able to be himself last year, obviously, and injuries were an issue too. But if you can get him healthy, if you can keep them both healthy, and you can give him somebody to throw the ball to, you tried to throw it in my face when I said I didn't trust their wide receivers. After week 1, they did all right, and then they never came back again. They can't repeat that. They can't have inconsistency. They need somebody that he can rely on because Nick Foles, he's got the tools that you need, but he needs the extra help as well. To where I sit there and I'm like, man, it's a huge deal. And I understand the market. And I understand they probably had to, although I really don't know who they were bidding against.
The Redskins.
Don't know if I fully believe it. I think the Jaguars are pretty much on there.
But
I think they overpaid him, is basically what I'm trying to say.
And that's the thing I was kind of thinking as well, where I'm thinking the only team that I could see bidding against Jacksonville for Nick Foles, the Washington Redskins. And I know there are some people out there that have said, like, oh, well, the Redskins should have went out and paid for Nick Foles to at least get him because they need a quarterback.
But they're probably sitting there saying, we don't think he's worth that much money.
See, and that's the question for me. Like, the Jacksonville Jaguars, I can't help but think the Jacksonville Jaguars are doing Jaguar things. Where, look at what they did for Blake Bortles. Oh, you got us to the AFC Championship? Here, take some money. Take some money. Here's your extension.
If you got problems, throw money at it.
How did that turn out? And I feel like with this one, did they need a quarterback? Could they have marched in with Blake Bortles this year as their quarterback? Absolutely not. They were forced into this decision in my mind.
And it's not a bad decision.
But I think I would have been happier as a Jaguar fan if they were like the Broncos and traded for Joe Flacco. Because I would feel like, okay, Joe Flacco is better than what we have, but we're not marrying Joe Flacco.
I disagree on that. You couldn't have gotten Joe Flacco.
Whereas
that would have not been a big improvement.
Whereas this, you're marrying Nick Foles for better or worse.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I'm coming into this thinking one thing. it's going to be for worse. The reason why, unless he is in Philadelphia green, he hasn't played well. Like, he hasn't had winning records outside of Philadelphia.
But still, to put it out there, that was with Jeff Fisher. Mm-hmm. Which, like we said and agreed, anyone would fail with Jeff Fisher. He played one game for the Chiefs, and that was it. And they did win that game.
Even before he went with Jeff Fisher, like when he played in Philadelphia,
he played
well. Yeah, he played well in Philadelphia.
That's my point. He played well in Philly. He went to a place where we agree he was going to fail.
Yeah, and
there was no succeeding in Jeff Fisher's offense. Ask Sam Bradford.
I wonder how he's going to do in Jacksonville because it's not the Philly system. B, think about this: the wide receivers that Philly had, way different,
much better
than what Jacksonville has.
The whole group, much better.
Like, my question becomes, now that you have Nick Foles, all right, Jacksonville, what are you going to do with that top 10 pick? Are you going to choose to protect Nick Foles or get him a DJ Metcalf?
Get him. You got to protect him.
Get him a wide receiver or protect him. If it's not one of those two moves.
That offensive line desperately needs a right tackle. And they need wide receivers as well. But I really think they need this offensive line just shirt up right now.
But it also
they could use tight ends too.
What's there also?
Yeah, they could use a tight end as well.
They could take T.J. Hawkinson. Some people have him in the top 10.
I wouldn't go that far, but I would love to see them trade up and grab Noah Fant. I would love to see them go back up in the first round and get a guy like that if you really believe he's that talented. It's a risky thing, but here's the thing where I'm not going to criticize Jacksonville, even though I think they overpaid.
Yeah.
They had to.
They did.
They didn't have another option. They couldn't put Blake Bortles out there.
They are a team.
They couldn't get a Joe Flacco.
They are a team 1 year removed from the AFC title game.
Yeah. They needed to take the risk. And you're saying that they're married to him, and it's like, yes, but they have to. This is that moment in poker where you're like, screw it. I'm all in. I have to do this right now. I've got a good enough hand here. Nick Foles is good enough. It's risky. I could still lose, but I have to go for it. And that's what it is. In Jacksonville, they've got so many pieces that they should be back. They should have been back to the AFC Championship again last year. They should have been right there, but the team just kind of fell apart. And a big part of that, just ask Jalen Ramsey that question there when he was saying, we all know what the problem is. I can't say what the problem is, but we all know what it is.
Like Bortles.
Exactly. You've got somebody else. You've got somebody better, somebody more talented. And hopefully age has been good to Nick Foles, and he's kind of put some of the past issues behind him, and he's ready to just move on and be a Super Bowl MVP again.
Yeah, and I mean, because it's not just because of the Blake Bortles thing that Jacksonville was kind of pinned into this.
There was injury issues. They didn't have any wide receivers.
It's not just that. There's a ton of reasons why. First off, like we said, you're a year removed from the AFC title game. Really, you were one penalty away from the Super Bowl to play Nick Foles and his Eagles. One penalty in that Patriot game away from beating the Patriots because they led going into halftime, had that bad penalty late in the game, kind of flipped momentum for the Patriots, and how they were able to take it. You have that. Then you have number 2, Blake Bortles. You could not trot him out this year after what he showed last year. Number 3 in my mind, look at the Colts. The Colts are a team, I know you and I, before the podcast, were kind of talking, and you were like, well, they're not really doing anything with that cap space that they got right now. Like, they've got so much of it, and they're not doing anything right away. And, of course, it's day 1 of free agency. We'll see how this kind of
Well, while we're recording this podcast,
out.
It's not even free agency yet.
Yeah, free agency doesn't officially start till Wednesday as we're recording this on Tuesday. But people are talking and kind of agreeing to deals already today. And you've got them, plus we've talked about Seattle numerous times. You mentioned them today on this podcast. The Jaguars have a similar issue with, as Seattle did, of this defense is, I'm going to say, in its prime. This defense is not going to be great forever. You need to cash in while you have all these chips lined up on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, this defense is going to be a big part of it. And the defense really, for Nick Foles, it could be the same. And I'm not comparing him to Trent Dilfer, but it could be a Trent Dilfer situation. That's all they need. And that's what they thought they would get with Blake Bortles.
They just need someone to not turn over
don't
the
mess
damn
it
ball.
up. And he did great with that when they went to the AFC Championship game. They just need him. And that's the best thing about Nick Foles. He doesn't really turn the ball over. He essentially has a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. You're pretty happy with what you get out of Nick Foles.
Yeah, the most he had was his last year in Philly, first year, or his only year in St. Louis. He had 10 and then 10.
Yeah. And to be fair, he didn't play 16 games in either one of them.
True.
But yeah, I mean, he's a guy who really doesn't turn over the ball that often. But that's going to be the other red flag, or not red flag, but concern for a lot of people is Nick Foles has never played a full season. It's never happened. He never played 16 games before.
The most he's played is 13 and started 10 his second year in the league.
And, you know, it's a little concerning just when you look at that because you need him to be out there all the time. But for Jaguar fans, I mean, this is the right move. You guys should be excited to have Nick Foles. He's a good quarterback. He is an above-average quarterback. There are teams that wish they had a quarterback like Nick Foles. Is it a risk? Sure, there's risk involved, but there are teams in free agency that did riskier things. Teams like the Jets, the Browns, the Packers, the Raiders, teams who went all in on a lot of different players, they have a bigger likelihood of failing than you guys just saying one thing, Nick Foles, that's all we need. Doesn't mean that you guys can't be the worst failure out of all of them, but you guys have a better chance of success than the people going out and getting everything.
And just because I'll say it again, I like playing this game. Here are the opponents for Jacksonville this year. Home opponents, division. Then you have the Jets, the Buccaneers, Chargers, Saints, Chiefs. 50-50.
Yeah.
Like you've got 3 that I see could be losses, 2 that could be win besides the division. Then on the road, you have the division. Then you have the Bengals, the Raiders, the Broncos, Falcons, and Panthers. An entirely mixed bag there.
Things are honestly looking pretty good when you look at that schedule. You should be able to get nine wins out of this.
Especially, like, I know they're on the road, but it's like the Bengals, the Raiders, the Broncos, the Falcons, the Panthers, all freaking question mark teams this year. What are we, like, Cam's injured. The Falcons, are they going to be what they were 2 years ago?
I would say
what
the
they were
Jaguars
last
are better
year?
teams than
Exactly.
every single one of those
and
teams.
then the Broncos, what are they going to be with Joe Flacco? And then the Raiders and Bengals, I would say Jacksonville with Nick Foles is better than both of those teams.
In the paper world that we're living in right now, if everything's on paper, no games have been played yet, and we haven't even gotten to the draft, this is a 9-win team for me, easy.
Yeah, and I mean, the true question...
Maybe a 10-win team because you got a couple toss-up games in there.
The true question is, and this is another thing I want to throw out there too, is he is being reunited in a sense with John DeFilippo. Is that going to make... I kind of want to say, is that going to make any difference? Of course it's going to make a difference. It's going to be better than going somewhere where he's not. But, like, you and I have answered or asked the question before of,
And
like,
I think we got the
when
answer,
those
too.
3 split up, who's the true mastermind in that? I mean, yeah, Frank Reich did good things with the Colts this year, but, like, Doug Peterson, again, had an injured Carson Wentz, took that team to the playoffs and won in the playoffs, although Cody Parkey helped them out a little bit.
Best player on the
Eagles. Should have won that game if they kicked a field goal right. And then John DeFilippo got fired by the Minnesota Vikings. So, I mean...
So you're really getting the worst of the bunch.
It comes into a sense of, like, does it... Yeah, I'll Dwayne The Rock Johnson it. Does it even matter that he's being reunited with DeFilippo?
I think it helps a little bit, but yeah, I don't think he was the mastermind. I mean, it's nice. It's like when in Chicago...
It's a familiar language, maybe?
Yeah, it's like in Chicago when they went and grabbed... I forget his name even at this point, but the quarterback coach that Jay Cutler worked really well with.
Dow Loggins. Was it Dow Loggins?
No, it wasn't Dow Loggins. It was somebody else that was a part of that same type of time. But they went and got him because they're like, It might have been Dow Logan. It probably was. They're like, yeah, they've got the familiarity, they got the language, it'll lead to success. And it started to lead to success, and then it led to failure immediately after. Could be a very similar situation, but, every team we talked about, except for the Steelers, I feel good about what they all did.
Even the Giants?
Yeah, because the Giants are a rebuild team.
Even though they're in the rebuild mode.
They did what they needed to do. They need to rebuild.
I'll ask you the same question I asked you about the Raiders and Steelers, and I'll get the same answer after you. Win the division, wild card, just miss the wild card, or completely out of the playoffs this year?
I'm going to put the Jacksonville Jaguars at probably wild card, but they've got a chance to win the division.
Yeah, I'm saying for sure wild card because I like the Colts better. I like that team better. I think they've got the better quarterback. They're a much better, well-coached team. Let's see what they do with a healthy Marlon Mack the entire year. But this Jacksonville team, there's no reason. And Nick Foles is also a quarterback, let's be honest. It might suit him a little better to come in as that wild card, come in as that underdog, because that's kind of and it was the whole team, but that's kind of what fueled the Philadelphia Eagles and why, when they won the Super Bowl, they had that dog mask because it's like, hey, we're the underdogs. No one expects us to win, so we're going to kind of embrace that a little bit.
They got a Super Bowl MVP, so you got to get production out of him like a Super Bowl MVP.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. How is the Nick Foles era going to play out in Jacksonville? I'm going to be honest, I'm a little skeptic with how it's going to go, basically because it's not the Philadelphia Eagles. But, I mean, Nick Foles, if he plays like he did the last 2 years, it shouldn't be a bad decision for Jacksonville. But let us know what you guys think down below. Also, make sure to hit us up on Patreon, patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. That's where you're going to help support the channel. $10 tier. You can join the podcast each and every month. You support us at that tier. Also, make sure to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. I almost said Apple iTunes, but Apple Podcasts. Make sure to please give us that 5-star rating. It really helps us out. And then follow us on Twitter. I'm at Ricky Widmer. Mark is at the Mark Weber with 2 E's. And Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. Want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Want to thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.